And here we go. Off to
That
the
was
races.
aggressive.
That was aggressive.
That was a very aggressive, full,
I-
just pop.
I was just telling our guest, I was listening back through some episodes that we've done previously, and I always just feel like I start talking about the weather, which is like what comedians always make fun of you about. Like, you ever been that guy in the Uber, like, oh, Seattle, rains a lot out here, and they're just like, why am I doing this? So I'm not going to talk about the weather other than to make fun of myself. But I will say one thing I'm super glad about right now is that I can watch sports again, football and NBA, to have some sense of normalcy in my life, even
That's
though there's
true.
no fans.
Are you as in as much disbelief as I am that the Clippers lost to the Nuggets?
Um, yes and no, just because I think that people had said all year, even not to go on an NBA tangent, but like I watch a fair amount of NBA, that the Clippers all year, they're like, oh, they'll just turn it on. They'll turn it on like when they need to, but they just never did. So it was like maybe they just were showing us their true selves. And
Possibly.
then they tried to blame it on this team chemistry thing. I was like, dude, you guys are up 3-1. No chemistry
That's not
problems
chemistry.
when you're winning.
Even if you all don't gel together, you're going to be able to win a game before the other team wins 3. It's wild. It was nuts to watch. But
no, I'm not surprised, but I would not have bet that way.
No.
So.
No. If you did, you probably won a lot of money.
Probably. I would say so.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or a good amount. Whatever. All right. Well, let's just get this show on the road. So, welcome everyone to the Aged Out Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Mike Fantini, and with me as always is
Evan Worrell.
And make sure you hit subscribe on the YouTube channel, follow on Facebook and Instagram, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and we found out recently we're apparently on Google Podcasts, and I don't know how that happened.
Sick. Google rules everything.
I don't know what service we're a part of, that it just happened. A friend of mine just sent me a text and was like, hey, you guys are on Google Podcasts now. Did you know that?
Sick.
Nope, no clue, but we'll take it. Freebies. Also, if you want to support us financially, hit us up on patreon.com/agedoutpodcast. And without further ado, make sure you check out Aged Out Reacts and the clip videos we're doing of these podcasts on the YouTube channel now, trying to leverage that platform a little bit more, show us the support on there as all of you always do on other platforms. So now that spiel is out of the way, let's get into today's guest. Evan, you want to go ahead and introduce them, and we'll go from there.
Sure. We have another California person joining us all the way from the sunny West Coast where the weather is much warmer. Weather again. There it is. But yeah, we are super grateful for her taking the time out to talk with us. And without further ado, we have Nicole Casino. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Wow. Thank you guys for having me. I was just going to say, like, you couldn't escape the weather, Evan. It was going to come back in some way.
You go with what works.
It's always going to come back.
You go with what works. And if it fills the space, it fills the space, and you just move on.
I hear
Dude,
you.
I mean, I use the weather every day, though. Like, I wake up, and I'll check my app. It decides what clothes I'm going to wear. So, I mean, I guess it rules me.
It's a pretty important part of our lives, especially now. Jesus. We're all bored at home anyways. Let's talk about the weather.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, it's nice. I can get outside. Thank God.
Yeah.
But
But
yes.
anyways, I mean, your guys' podcast is so awesome. It's just as something for the marching community to stay connected. I've always looked for ways after I quote unquote aged out to stay involved, and this is just like another medium for everybody to stay connected and find out cool things about all these dynamic people in our activity. So props to you guys for starting this.
Oh,
and
thank you.
I'm super honored to talk to you guys.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, really, like, otherwise, if we weren't doing this, we probably would have not be having this conversation or any conversation with you unless we were just, like, randomly be like, hey, how's it going? And he'd be like, why is this person talking to me randomly on Facebook?
Well, it's like we were talking earlier, like, I don't think we've actually ever met in person, but that's happened a lot. People are just connecting online. It's like, I don't think we've ever actually met, but hi, do you want to do, like, a collab or a podcast or something? And so I'm meeting all of these other people in the activity that I never would have met otherwise, like, just like you said. So I'm down for it.
Heck yeah. If anything, it's all given us a little bit more time to just, like, I don't know, sit down and write something or produce something or
Oh yeah.
create something. So
I've seen a lot of little random projects from all kinds of people that I marched with or met through marching that have popped up on the internet since all this, coronavirus and lockdowns and just the weird 6 months we've had as a world, as a planet. So,
but I'm sure that's kind of a great bookend because we're about to Oreo this. So obviously we're talking about all the awesome stuff that we are kind of getting into now as a result of COVID and having more time on our hands. But we'll digress a little bit, kind of backtrack, and then I'm sure end up back to what kind of you have going on right now. But you obviously have a unique experience that not a lot of us Midwesterners do, where you were super involved in indoor and stuff early on. So kind of take us through, I guess, music in your life, just how you got introduced to drumming, music, percussion, everything.
Sure. I mean, like you said, I was really fortunate to just kind of grow up in a community where that was always prevalent of, just drumline in general. Let's not even talk about music for a second. Just like go straight to specifics. Drumline was always kind of showcased. I remember going to like my middle school orientation and the drumline performed. And I was like, I don't know what that is, but I want to do it. It looks super cool. So then it was just kind of history from there. I did drumline through middle school, and then I went to Chino Hills High School. And I was telling you guys earlier, I was telling Evan earlier that, a bunch of freshmen came in for my class, so they had no choice, lacking a bunch of seniors or upperclassmen, to put us all in the upper battery. And I just vividly remember them sitting us down at the end of our marching band season saying, so do you guys want to go world class? And we're just looking at John and Ian with these blank stares like, what's world class? Sure. Sounds fun. Let's do it. Do we get to play paradiddles and rolls really fast? Cool. Let's do it. So then we experimented with world class at an SUPA here in Southern California. That's our local circuit. And then our first year in WGI was 2008, which was my sophomore year. And we did fairly well for our first time. I think we landed 6th, and to us that was a win because we were competing against all these like legendary schools like Mission Viejo and Ayala, and even Chino was in there, Arcadia. We were just like all in awe. I remember seeing Rhythm X for the first time, saying like, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. Just complete like fangirl for everything about the activity. So
that's a good X show to see too. That Gone show.
Oh my gosh.
Incredible.
2008. I was just like
incredible
in tears the whole time. I loved it. But then in 2009, that was a kind of an iconic show that a lot of people remember. Chino Hills was, we had the Obama quote in the show, and our center snare played really fast singles.
Those are the fastest singles I've seen someone play in a show.
I think swear. It's the same for me, up to this day.
Because that was really my first exposure to Chino Hills, because that was actually my 3rd year of doing indoor. I was with an independent open group, so we finished super early in the afternoon compared to the world groups, both scholastic and independent. So we're just like, oh, we're gonna go check out the lots, and we're like, oh, Chino Hills is this group, and then this kid just rips these singles. I was like, what is happening right now?
Yep. That was a lot of people's reactions. I just remember our lots being ridiculous for that reason. Everybody wanted to go see the singles.
Hey, whatever it takes.
Watch. Yeah.
They were incredible.
That's kind of funny though. You glossed over. You said it was pretty successful. Your freshman year, 2007, we bumped to World, end up finishing 2nd in SCPA to Mission Viejo, which went on to win Scholastic World at WGI that year. So not a bad jump.
Not a bad jump. But like I said, in perspective, we were just didn't really know what was going on. First of all, we were just,
do you think
trying to grind. And
do you think that naivete, whatever you say it, kind of helped you guys that you were so young? It allowed because it was John and Ian still, even at that time, right? Do you think that might have helped you guys to just be all right, we're just going to do exactly what they say and work our butts off and whatever, and then it kind of happened?
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's kind of the oblivion of just show up to rehearsal, do your job, do what they say, follow the formula, or we don't know any better, so we're just going to keep practicing. And, where we end up, we end up. enjoying the process. And, none of us ever expected second or third or whatever. But when you end up there, you're like, oh, wow, it really pays off. So it just started to build momentum. The oblivion kind of goes away and the talent takes over, or the determination takes over to do better than the year before. So then I think after that point, it was just like, we got to continue this thing. Like, let's continue the success. And then it showed, I think, by the time I was a senior.
Oh, it definitely showed.
Yeah. Yep. We went from, I think in 2009, we ended up getting our first WGI medal. In 2009, we got bronze, we got third, and we flip-flopped with Ayala.
Yeah, they beat you guys at SCPA, got retribution.
Yep. So we flipped in 09, and then it was kind of like the talk of the town because my senior year in 2010, we flipped again. They ended up getting the gold and kicked us into silver. So it was like, oh, we got you guys back for taking our medal last year. Like, super just, We're literally 10 minutes away from each other. The two high schools are right down the street.
And Arcadia is pretty close too, isn't it?
Arcadia is about a good 30 minutes from us, yeah.
That's
still the
that
same
seems pretty close to us.
That's real close.
Yeah, I mean,
it makes you wonder, like, what's in the water? Like, what's going on with those kids out there that 3 incredible schools are in like a 40-mile radius of each other?
Yeah, I don't know, man. If I figure it out, I'll let you know.
Well, I think part of
has
it
to
the
do
formula
with
too, that maybe a lot of people are thinking like, what, middle school drumline? You mentioned earlier, like doing middle school drumline marching, like that is not a thing here. So
nope.
Like maybe that's just like pretty exclusive to that part of California even. At least in our perspective, most people start their marching band career in 9th grade. Like that's the first time you pick up marching sticks and like learn like, oh, you gotta move your feet, like what?
Right.
But so yeah, obviously like my sophomore year or freshman year, the capability to do what you were able to do, having I guess a couple years of moving and playing under your belt, is drastically different.
Oh yeah, I mean you see it out here, especially because it's so competitive. It's like the ones that are gonna be successful are the ones that have feeder programs, or the junior highs that have some type of marching percussion education. And it's not every high school out in Southern California, but it's enough to where, it kind of bulks up our region and becomes like just normal. Like, oh yeah, I do drumline. Oh, cool. Yeah, so do I. But, 40 miles away. It's just this weird, but you go somewhere else in the country and, they're like, drumline, what's that? Like the movie? So, this, it's completely different culture. So
that's pretty awesome. And I would say too, just speaking about culture, looking back on those scores, like when I was researching, I didn't really know the placements until I looked them up. And so it was kind of interesting to see that growth of, oh, here we are, your freshman year, you guys didn't even do WGI. Then you leapt into your second year, 6th, 3rd, 2nd, and that growth and the rise. Because I think a lot of times now people witness Chino Hills, the juggernaut that it is, and they're just like, they're going to compete for a gold every year no matter what. But really, it was Ian and John and what seemed like those years that kind of paved the way for the culture that was created and established to what it is now. And I guess you've probably had some experience going back and teaching after, like, do you get to tell those kids like, it wasn't like this when I was here?
That's the first thing I say. I'm like, man, you guys have it so good. Like, you're set up for success. You just, there's so many people that want to see that program continue to succeed. So there's, lots of alumni that come back and help out, whether, it's this much or really, really big. And you have to remind those kids, they do history night. They do Chino Hills history night where they watch like from when Chino Hills competed in open class. And all the kids will sit there and laugh and be like, ha ha ha, they suck. I'm like, hey, okay, easy. We got you here. Give us some credit. Like,
we laid the foundation,
Yeah. No, but I tell you, once they figured out the connection to the middle school, it was game over. It's like the middle school plays pretty much the same exercise packet as the high school, maybe a little watered down version. So like you said, by the time you get to your freshman year, sophomore year, you've already been playing these exercises for 4 years. Or, by the time you're a senior, it's like you've done you've competed at the highest level of the activity, which leads to, at least, around my time and a little bit after, not a lot of those kids wanted to go on and do drum corps or drum corps or WGI even, because you had kind of already been at that level of the activity and been pushed and pushed and pushed, that you're like, okay, but what else is there? I've already been here, or I'm tired. I want to go do something else.
That makes sense.
And that's
burnt out kind of feeling.
And that's something that I've pointed out to Evan before too. And I'm like, why? Like, obviously you went on and did drum corps after coming from the Chino program, and like, why are there not more of you guys? And I think you speaking to, like, maybe they're burned out a little bit because you start when you're 10 or 11,
right? And
you're already 7 years deep by the time you finish high school, and you're just like, all right, well, I've been there, done that a little bit, so I could definitely see where that would be the case. Because I've definitely asked Evan the question. We've had this conversation of, Chino's so good. How do we not see more of these kids around the drum corps activity?
I think too, it's, if you speak relatively from like where they are in their division, like Scholastic World, versus like making the transition, like not everyone would be able to transition from we're going to compete for a gold in Scholastic to I'm going to go compete for a gold in Independent. So like going from the Chino Hills experience of we're going on last in Scholastic World, our lot is insane, like everybody's just throwing babies and going crazy, and then they're just giving it up to us on the floor when we go out there and perform, and then like transition that to like DCI where the lots are, where's the drum line? I can hear them, but I can't see them. I don't know where they are. It's a much different experience. So you could be like, oh, I'm not going to get that same like high that I'm getting from this. So, but obviously you transitioned pretty well.
Yeah, definitely made the jump.
Man, it's, I was talking to Evan about this earlier too, is just the being immersed in WGI and having success in WGI. We grew up in that culture and never really dived into what drum corps was, at least in high school. Our marching band was never great. It was just something that we had to do in order to do the winter. Like, it was just that was the trade-off. So we did it, and, never really learned about SCV or Blue Devils or like all of the regional corps out here. It was just this far off thing. I remember seeing my first drum corps video in 2009. I was a junior in high school, and it was Santa Clara Vanguard, and just asking people around me, like, what is this? And, is this like marching band on steroids? Why would anyone want to do that? Like, because we were so immersed in like the indoor culture. So I always knew I wanted to go on and march WGI and march independent. That was always a goal of mine. Like, and then Pulse won in 2010, so that was my natural choice. I'm like, oh, I want to go to the ensemble that's the best, and Pulse just won, so I'm gonna go to Pulse. I'm gonna audition. So I took lessons all summer.
I'm sure it didn't hurt going from John and Ian to John and Ian, knowing a little bit of the system.
Already kind of knowing the exercises, and yep.
Yeah, the technique and kind of the approach to the instrument. Although I will say, who'd you take lessons from in between?
I took lessons from Jesus. He's an old Blue Devil. He's not old. He's gonna be mad at me if I call him old. But he marched Blue Devils and has taught Arcadia forever and was teaching Pulse at the time. So I linked up with him.
Because I will say, like, you definitely made the transformation of like high school hands to like independent hands. I was like, oh, she's like, all right, yeah, she's in there. Because it's a difference. I mean, there's a little bit of a difference.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
But obviously, like going from playing in high school to being in a line with like some people that I know, like Nate Medina and like Manny and stuff, like that's a pretty big jump. So that's pretty sick.
Man, that 2011 line was, when I look back at it now, it was just stupidly stacked. Like, you had the center snare from the Cavaliers, the center snare from Vanguard, center snare from Bluecoats, and then you had Easy, who marched Phantom under Rennick for years, and then you had a Blue Knights guy, and you had a couple of rookies just like kind of filling in the gaps. But I look back at it now, I'm like, how did I not know how intimidating that was? Again, it was just one of those situations where I was so oblivious, and I was like, just do your job.
Bliss.
Like,
ignorance is bliss a little bit.
Right.
I have to point out, Manny has some of the best hands. Like in his prime, I'm sure he can still drum now, but like in his prime, has some of the best, fastest, high quality hands I think I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, his sound quality is off the charts.
It's nuts.
I was gonna say you probably marched with two dudes that I would put up there on that list of like my top like just snare drum hands, but with Manny and Keelan.
Oh yeah.
Oh jeez.
But anyway,
so
do you Pulse 2011 Generation Next show? You got to pull out your camera, take a selfie.
Yep, pull out the phones.
So then we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier about how this unfolded, but you end up going on to march Bluecoats for the summer of 2011. So basically, you get out, perform finals, WGI. How did the 2011 season happen for you for the summer?
Yeah, this is probably the most comical story of my career at this point. But you know, like I said, I didn't grow up in the DCI community. I had no idea what it was. About 2 months into the Pulse season, everyone's going out to these DCI auditions and are asking me, you know, where are you going to audition? Where are you going to march? I was like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, you're not marching DCI? No, I wasn't planning on it. Well, literally everybody around me was marching somewhere, and I was the only person that didn't go audition. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll audition for Vanguard. But because that was what I had seen in 2009. Go on their website, they're like, yeah, the audition already passed. I'm like, okay, well, maybe next summer. Our snare tech at the time at Pulse was Eric Shriver, and he, on a random like weekday in March, he was like, hey, you're not marching anywhere for the summer, right? And I was like, no.
I can hear his voice in my head saying that.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Yep. Long story short, he's like, we have a spot open at Bluecoats. Are you interested? And again, like being oblivious, was like, sure, I'm interested. He's like, okay, show up at this location. It was Chino High School. At this time, you're going to play one-on-one for Mike Jackson. And then we'll let you know if you get the spot. I was like, hold on.
Have you met Mike before that?
I had never met Mike.
Okay.
No.
I'll let you finish this story, and then I have something to add. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, you know, I go learn the exercise packet. I show up to Chino High School. It's dark. I have my drum with me. I set it up. I see this guy walking towards me. He's like, you're Nicole, right? And I was like, yeah. I was like, I assume you're Mike. Yeah, hi, okay. He's like, I'm just going to be over there. I'll give you a couple seconds to warm up. Okay. I just see him off in the distance leaning against this pillar, like staring at me. And I'm like, how am I supposed to warm up right now? Like, I don't even want to play eights. Like, he's going to judge me.
He's judging me.
I don't want to play anything right now. So I just like warmed up as best as I could. He came over. He had me play two things. He had me play short, long with him. I think we played a parallel exercise, and that was pretty much it. And then he turned to me and said, cool, you're going to be number 10. And I was like, number 10? He's like, yeah, we're going 10 snares. Okay. And then it was just kind of history. Like, he sent me the contact for one of the drum majors and admin guys. And then the first time I met the snare line was at WGI Finals. It was like, I met Drew Guy, I met Luke Willingham, all those guys, like, for the first time. And then
T-Gas, although
Joe
Woody.
That's funny.
Oh, that's my buddy Joe Woody.
That's interesting to me. That means they planned on going 10. Usually you go 10 if you just like, we can't cut anybody. Like, everyone's good. Like, we just got to suck it up and go 10. It's funny. Like, do you know what their reasoning? Was it a numbers thing with the quads, basses, or core numbers? Like, do you know why they wanted ahead of time to go 10?
I honestly have no idea.
That's really interesting to me. I didn't know that.
But they did know, because they could have easily gone 9.
Yeah.
Well, I think that they were very interested in going 10 from the beginning, because they had like 7 vets or something like that in the snare line, I'm pretty sure. Right. And then at the first audition, when I went for the 2011 season, like, I was there and T-Gas was there, and I just marched 2 years of Crown, and he'd marched 2 years of Cadets, and then I just finished like 2 years of Rhythm X, and he had done like United and X or whatever. So like, all right, yeah, we have like a stacked audition room. and they hadn't even really gotten into the satellite camps at that point, in which they started with the Cali groups. And they're like, all right, we're going to get some kids there too. So I think early on they kind of made the decision to go 10. And by March, they probably like had half the drill written or something. So like, oh, we got to find another snare drum.
Yeah. Well, I know the guy that was in the 10th spot. It was Taha. Pretty sure it was Taha.
Really?
And he had to bail at the last minute, or I forget what was the exact reason, but he bailed at the last minute, and that's why they were like, we need to fill this spot if we can.
All right, I'm going to have to text him later because I stood next to him all summer in 2012, and I don't remember this. I feel like that does maybe ring a bell. I don't remember. That's nuts.
So
the only reason why I know that was because when we started teaching Blue Nights, or when I was teaching Blue Nights, and I met Taha for the first time, that was what he said to me. He was like, "Oh, you're the girl that took my spot in 2011." I was like, "What?"
That's awesome, man.
Like, no,
Taha's definitely one of my favorite people from that summer in 2012. He's just an amazing dude.
I don't blame you.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
I had the pleasure of standing next to him for an entire summer, and it was great. He's an that dude can play lower with quality than anyone I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
So yeah, we almost marched together, but did not march my age out, which would have been funny. But here we are. Life comes full circle.
Probably if you would have marched, I wouldn't have been in the drumline. So
that's maybe true.
I don't know. I don't know how it would have worked. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know. You're welcome. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, thank you. Evan, I owe all of this to you, for real.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Oh my gosh. So spend a summer at Bluecoats. That's 10-person snare line. Stood on the end. Mike knows what that's like to play on the end of his 10-person snare line. Not the easiest thing in the world.
It's not fun.
No, it sucks.
You're way out there from the middle.
It sounds.
There's kind of an
iconic
moment good. From that show in the drum line. You guys had that like 6 measure long roll. Everybody's just like freaking out.
That thing came about as like we were at a sectional and we were playing the stabs. Like it was written as stabs, like the rest of the drum line, while the horns just like went to town. And Drew, in Drew fashion, was like, "Hey, what if we played a roll like this whole time?" And Eric was like, "Sure, let's try it." Like an Eric voice. And so we did, and then we showed it to Mike. He's like, "Sure, let's do it." And then the drill guys were like, "Cool, but then you're gonna run from one sideline to the other sideline while you do it." And then we're like, "Wait, no, that's not what we signed up for."
No, we don't want to do that. That doesn't sound fun.
Where's my stand?
Yeah.
Right.
2011, spin as a blue coat. 6 words. Yeah. Go back and do a couple more seasons at Pulse, 2012, 2013. One of which you end up as the center snare. So sick. Welcome to the responsibility.
Yep.
Sad face.
And then, how did that all come about? Were they like, "Hey, you're just gonna be the center"? You're like, "All right, cool, let's go."
It was kind of like a next in line thing, to be honest. In 2012, Manny was the oldest. He was the only age out in the snare line. We had kind of a line full of rookies, and then myself and the other guy, Mo, had come back from 2011. And then in 2013, Manny aged out, and I had pretty much the most experience. You know, I knew the staff really well, so it was, again, it was just like next in line. She's most qualified for the spot. Let's do it. That
was a really fun show. That was like the Riot show, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Renegade.
I don't remember.
Renegade, yeah.
Renegade. It was something R's. Like, I don't remember the title, but it's like come out. It's like, all right, here we go.
Had
We're
all
about
those
to mess
yellow
stuff
flags with the fists on them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Chris Drummer had that nasty quad solo.
Yep.
Yeah, he's a sick quad player.
Yeah.
With the most
that's an
fitting
understatement.
name ever. His brother is really good too.
I know, it's the irony.
Some people are just built for it, I guess.
Genetics.
You like are naturally talented and also work really hard, and it's just like, you're gonna be phenomenal at this.
It also probably doesn't help that is it older brother? Is Chris the older brother? I'm assuming.
No, Steven's the older.
Actually.
Oh well.
Steven, the snare drummer, Steve. Yeah, he's a snare drummer. He's the older one.
Then maybe the older one is part of the reason that Chris was so good because he had that resource.
Maybe.
It's possible.
I don't know. They're both pretty nasty. So end up spending somewhere along the lines there in between your 11, 12, 13 years for Pulse, you decide you're gonna make a switch. You're gonna go audition for the Blue Devils. What was kind of your thinking? Like, oh, I'm gonna change it up. This group's closer. What you got?
Yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head. I remember being at I had full plans to march Bluecoats. Go back in 2012. I was at the satellite camp, and I went to
Really?
I went to the SoCal
I did not
camp
know that.
for Bluecoats, and it was all good. And then I got a call pretty soon after that one of my good friends, Nick RC, was gonna be the center snare at Blue Devils, and I was like, "But you're a quad player. What are you talking about? Like, what?"
Dude, that's what I said too when somebody told me. I was like, "Wait, what?"
The entire community said.
Yep. And then, they were doing a little turnover of staff, and they were all people that I wanted to learn from. So Nick kind of said, "Hey, come be a part of something really special." And I was like, "Well, it's closer to home. I get to see my family more, and more familiarity, I guess." So it was kind of a win-win.
It was special.
Yeah.
That's
That was kind of where the thought process was behind that.
And I'm sure that you can attest to this, like every other person that has marched Blue Devils that we've had on this podcast. I'm sure your summer was incredibly different as far as
Yes.
your Bluecoats summer.
It was. I don't want to say at the time that was the reason why I left, but I realized quickly that it would be a different summer than the one that I had previously marched.
What would you say was like the biggest difference? If you could hit the nail on the head. That's a very big question, I realize, to throw at you, but
yeah, I've thought about it a lot because I've been asked about it a lot, but I think it was the accountability and the trust in the members. I feel like the lack of trust at Bluecoats, maybe just when I marched, of like, we have to beat it over the head because they're not going to be accountable on their own. Like, we have to kind of rehearse, and almost, beat a dead horse with it. Whereas at Blue Devils, it was like, hey, we trust that you're going to get it. We're only going to do a couple reps of this, and we're going to give you some time off. We're going to come back refreshed, and we're going to get it. Like, it just felt a little more professional and less hand-holding, if in a good and a bad way. It was like, if you messed up, like, everyone's going to know and you're going to get called out. But I don't know. It just felt more like, yeah, a professional climate is a good way to put it.
that's the way I've heard it put by a few people that have marched other corps and then went and marched BD, is that you feel closest in their minds to like a professional athlete compared to being just like a student or like a member in another corps.
Exactly. Yeah, that's spot on. You went from, that's a great analogy. You went from a student athlete to a professional athlete, for sure.
Yeah, and
And that summer.
when I marched Blue Stars in 2010, our sound guy was a guy that had marched Contra for Blue Devils, and I don't remember the years, probably like the late 2000s, if that makes sense. And I asked him one day on a lunch break, I was like, so what's the difference? Like, what do they do differently? Like, is it that much different than what we're doing here? And he goes, dude, it's a well-oiled machine. He goes, they understand what they can expect from the members. They expect it. They trust the members to do the right thing. He goes, part of it is they have an extremely high level of talent, but at the same time, there's still young members in that corps every year. The average age is high, but you have some 18-year-olds, some 19-year-olds, and they still know within their system how to make it work. And he said it's smooth, it's methodical, and it works. And it's just a completely different ball game than marching elsewhere.
That's not to say that, I even went to the lot in 2012 to watch Bluecoats, and I was like in love with that book, by the way. It's like, I remember going to the lot with Keelan, and I was just like grooving so hard. Except me, he's like, you look like you want to be over there. And I was like, Keelan, shut up. Like, yes, kind of, but because we were sucking ass at the time, but it was just funny,
No, that book was, It was definitely way more. It was less aggressive than the book I played at 2010 at Blue Stars. Obviously, it was a Tom Monk's book versus a Tom Rarick book, and obviously those are a little bit different at their core in the approach they take to arranging. But it was a very definitely a special experience. Like, we had a lot of fun. The whole snare line was age outs except for Joe Woody.
Yep.
But so it was a good time. It was fun. The drill wasn't very hard, so it allowed us to really achieve at a high level on the field, which, obviously, being age outs, we're kind of jaded and kind of over we don't want to run. Just pick our spots. Let us run a little bit here and there. We'll play really clean and move on with our lives. But
that's funny. You so you got your first taste that summer of a gold medal, and also stole a drum trophy from Mike. Congratulations.
Hey, now. We're all friends here.
Weren't you guys second, Mike?
Yeah, well, technically it was a 3-way tie for second, because it was Cadets, Vanguard, and us, and the 3 nights of finals. We all flip-flopped in the perfect interval and order to where it was exactly a 3-way tie for second. But technically, we got second on finals night, so that's what I'm going to go with.
You guys got second. We're calling it.
Tiebreaker. So Nick was right. It was something special. That was a phenomenal show. Phenomenal drum line, percussion ensemble all around. Then I guess what's next in timeline? So you did 13, and then you decided, I guess, or no, 12. Then it would have been 13 winter. Then you decided, I guess, to make the switch after your second year of BD, right? So you went back, or I guess, how'd that conversation happen? You roll in, you are now a veteran, get to be in the middle again of the infamous Blue Devils snare line drum corps. Like, take us through that.
Yeah. So after the 2012 season, the way that the center snare is kind of brought about for BD is you kind of have to pitch yourself to the staff, show interest, like, hey, they're not just going to just randomly pick somebody. You do have to say, I'm interested in the spot. Here's why. Sell yourself a little bit. And then during auditions, whoever is interested, they kind of rotate in and out of the center. You try to show your leadership skills, yada, yada, yada. So, I kind of went through that process, talked with Scott, and he, was like, okay, if you're going to do this thing, know that it's going to come with some scrutiny. And I was like, I figure that, people are going to be watching me for hopefully good reasons. But, he was very quick to say, if there's any haters, I'm going to shut them down, because, we're not picking you because you're a girl. We're picking you because you're the best person for the job. And I was like, yeah, Scott, that's all I want. I just want that respect. So we moved forward with that, and it just became this thing that I don't think I realized was going to be what it was until I was living it. It's like you can't really see what the future is going to hold or what that summer was going to hold for me. But I just remember all of the little parts along the way of, like, just being able to be in a spot of representation for other females and other girls. Like, when I was going through high school, I was the only girl in the drum line, if not one of 2. So just being able to see, like, girl drummers show up to the lot at Blue Devils and be like, I started drumming because I saw you. Or even now, I see girls in world-class ensembles that say, I started drumming because I saw you at the Blue Devils. And that's just, like, wild to me, So
it's awesome, though. I would imagine that obviously when they're going through the selection process of that for the summer of 2013, you're also in the midst of your center snare position for the winter of 2013, which just by circumstance, like, happened back to back. But I'm sure throughout the time, like through WGI and then the following summer, that the notoriety and, like, the recognition were, like, starting to, like, hit you from maybe, like, a more social media aspect. Would you say that you got, like, messages and things like that from people reaching out?
Yeah, 100%. It was like, you see your accounts start to just explode on social media. And this is, like, I think Instagram had only been around for a couple years at that time. So it wasn't like it is now. It was probably more Facebook or something else. I don't know. But more people coming up to me in person, which was, like, I think even weirder, like at shows and stuff. Like, oh my gosh, can you sign my sticks? Like, yeah, but it's like the imposter syndrome of like,
yeah,
I don't know,
yeah,
but okay. And then it would just continue to happen, and then people got like really started to question my decisions, I guess, when I left my center snare spot Pulse and went to RCC in 2014. They're like, what? Why would she leave her center position to go to RCC? And I don't get it. But in my head, it was the same for one of the same reasons why I wanted to go to Blue Devils. It was like I wanted to learn from a different staff. I kind of just want to absorb as much information as I could with the time I had as a performer. I had spent by 2013, I had spent almost 10 years with that staff from like previous to high school for like a little bit, and through high school, through Pulse. I had Eric at Pulse and Eric at Bluecoats. So it was just a lot of continuation of the same information. I felt like I wasn't learning. So I was like, you know what? I have friends that I just marched to Blue Devils with. They're at RCC. I really like the stuff that they do. Haven't worked with that staff before. Let's try it out. So,
and I'm sure that like obviously with the professionals that they are, like Ian and John were like, yeah, we get it. But were you like, oh, how do I have this conversation? That I want to go do something different.
100%. When you're that connected, like there's lots of loyalty involved. It's like, what the heck? You've been with us for this long and now you're going to leave us? Like, why? I know that there's definitely some bitter feelings. Like, I'm sure I burned the bridge for a little bit. Everything is cool now. But at the time, there was a lot of questions, a lot of like, we want you to do what's best for you, but this really freaking sucks.
Didn't they win in 14 though? Was that the box show where Ramos was the center?
Oh, and Pulse, they definitely won in 14. And funny story, there was a lot of Pulse people that jumped ship to RCC in 2014. It's like I went over, Chris Drummer went back over to RCC, a couple bass drummers, a quad drummer. So there was definitely some animosity of like, okay, we all left, and then they just demolished everybody in WGI. And they're like, you're going to come back for 15? We're like, no, I think we're going to ride it out. We're going to ride the wave up.
That's pretty sweet. Just to kind of go back to, I just remembered that. I was like, didn't they win in 14?
Thanks for pointing that out, Evan.
You're welcome. That's all right. I never won a gold medal in anything, so I have lots of silvers. Lots of silvers.
Evan has been so close so many times.
Yeah. That's all right. It's fine. I won in my heart. Anyway.
That's what I tell myself about 2012, too. So, whatever helps you sleep at night.
Second in indoor, second overall in drum corps, second in drums and drum corps. It's whatever. But
he's not salty.
I kind of can see from like an outside perspective, too. I guess for me, it was always different, too, just because obviously I'm not a female, but I marched with some really talented girls in 2009. Ashley was in the snare line at Crown for her second year. And then 2010, she was actually the center.
That's right.
Before she got injured, and I was thrust into the center position and did not enjoy it. So then I was going to go march somewhere else and like not have the responsibility. But I just always felt like it was cool that, and you said you were like, or saying that Scott would like squash the haters, but I think fortunately for the activity, I don't know, the people that are involved and the people that are making decisions are in general supportive. Like she always had so much support, and I think most of the things that I've seen about you have always been just so much support. And the people who are haters are just like, well, you live in a place that doesn't either one compete in any of these activities or to like educate or build any of these activities in any way, so we're just going to ignore what you say because you're in trouble. So hopefully that was a similar experience for you, and just the outpouring and support. But
100%, like when I say, like he said, if there's haters, there was never a situation where he had to like step in or I had to experience something that I should have. It was like weirdly smooth sailing. Even with the guys in the line, because you guys know, it's halfway through your drum corps summer, you start, getting at each other's throats a little bit, and you're like, man, I hate this guy, or, the tempers run wild and patience run wild, and things are said. But I never once had an instance from anybody in the drumline really where I felt disrespected. And I think that also contributed to like diminishing the imposter syndrome and having more confidence as a leader. Because if you're constantly feeling disrespect or like you're not worthy from the rest of the drumline, you're going to start to think it yourself eventually. So I think, props to those guys in the snare line, and really the two that stood next to me, Henry and Brandon, were like really my right and left hand of communication. And like, I would talk to them frequently, like, hey, like, did I do this okay? Did I say that okay? Like, how's the drumline feeling? And they were always like, yeah, maybe you should approach it like this, or we're a little tired today. Let's not drum on the bus after, or, just little things. But you got to have a village. It can't just be one guy or one girl. So I think that's what made a lot of that successful.
100% a group effort.
That communication is so important, just for any leadership. And like you're saying, there's always a point where everybody's like, if you're competitive and you have a desire to like be great, like you're always just gonna like start at some point just being like, oh, like what are we doing? Like we gotta do this better or something.
Yeah.
That's universal, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
But ironically, on that note, like I feel like the groups that can ignore the pressure the most are the ones that end up excelling to the highest peak by the end of the season. Like the groups that can compartmentalize and like forget about the fact that like, we're like in the top 2 in drums every night. Like we might win the Fred Sanford. Like if you can ignore that, because the more pressure you put on yourself, the more likely you are certain individuals or anyone in that battery or pit or percussion section is more likely to screw up. Like the second you're afraid to mess up is when you're going to mess up. So
Yep. 100%. Yeah. It's like as successful as the Blue Devils are, we never once necessarily talked about scores or talked about like, we got to get the gold. Like we won last year or we didn't win last year. We have to get the gold. It was always the conversation of, if you beat the Blue Devils, you will win. Like we were told that constantly, and it never really clicked to me until Scott like explained it. He's like, if you beat the Blue Devils that existed yesterday, you'll essentially win, because if you really believe that you have the best individuals, the best performers, or even if you're trying to beat last year, like you will be successful. It might not come out in numbers and it might not come out in a medal, but it will come out in history of like, you'll be great once again and like contribute to the legacy. So I think that's also like super important.
That's a pretty awesome way to phrase that. I mean, that's be better than you were
really
yesterday.
Well said.
I mean, boom. So
that was something I always felt that Mike Jackson was really good about, was managing the mentalities of the people in the drum line.
Oh, yeah.
Because like you said, there's a lot of if the summer goes on and gets longer, it's a long tour, and people are like maybe have bad days and good days, and you have to be able to read as a staff, okay, this person's a little down, we need to pump them up a little bit, or we need to, you know what I mean? Just like, you can't let anyone get inside their own head. And Mike was always really good in 2012, at least, because I know I had ups and downs like we all do throughout our summer tours. And the days where I was on a down, like, he was really good at just kind of doing subtle things, or I had a couple conversations with him about X, Y, or Z, or he was just really good at that. And it's super important.
Speaking of Mike Jackson, your last year at RCC, Mike Jackson was still there, yeah?
Yes.
I assume so, because like it's one of my favorite WGI shows of all time anyway, but just like the end part where they have that just like snare moment with the Adam Watts song, who now like has been obviously adopted by Broken City artists and stuff like that. But that just like, I don't know, like the way that makes me feel when I watch it, just like makes me feel like a kid, like, and it's like super nostalgic, and I'm like, oh, this warms my heart. But that overall show in general, the Guardians of the Breath, is just phenomenal. Like, was that season from the beginning, you guys were like, all right, we got something?
Yes, 100%. It was like, you want one of those seasons, or you hear about those seasons when you're marching, like, oh, it was just perfect from the beginning to the end. Like, that was literally 2015. It was, everything clicked from day one. Like, everybody just knew that it was something special, and it was like, don't fuck it up. Like, kind of like, like, nobody move, like just ride the wave kind of thing.
Don't overthink it.
Right. Like, it's just, yeah, it was the most memorable season for a lot of reasons. Like, those seasons where you don't have to change any part of the show, like, or I guess that was the only one for me, but I think that's how we knew. Like, we didn't edit anything. It was like most of the first drafts, or quote unquote first drafts, that the members got. I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but that was pretty much what stuck, aside from a few little drill tweaks, but everything just kind of fell into place. We brought on some of the Blue Devils choreographers to help out with some prop stuff, because we had those like metal trees. Had to learn how to bring those up and down, and we had a bunch of floor work. So I think they learned pretty quickly that the drumming aspect of the show was going to be quite all right, and that we could kind of expand into like, let's put the drums between your legs and then spin you around on the floor and play some solos. Like, okay, sure, we're down. Or make a human tree with the snare line. It was like, and then just the overall message of the show, I think, made it easy for the performers to buy into, and it clearly showed.
RCC, I would say, is known, or at least in my perspective, known for doing some very abstract shows, some of which land and some of which don't. And that was one that definitely landed. And so you just watch and you're like, yeah, I can relate to this. Like, everything about it, the vibe, the pacing, the playing, the visual, it clicked. And that's well represented when you watch it, and why it was well deserving of the all-time record at that point, which it's probably still should be, in my opinion. But that's a topic for another day.
Who beat it? Who beat it?
Broken City this year. Oh, yeah, see, exactly.
Cut there.
Which they were good, but I just don't think they deserve the record. But that's,
moving on.
I'll say that. I don't care. I'll die on that hill.
This podcast is for opinions. Yeah. It's for opinions, so
it's a subjective activity. It's all right. So then I guess now your marching career is over. You went out on a high. Awesome. And now you've gotten to what we all are. We're aged out. So obviously you've taught many different places. You got to be a part, I guess, in the mix somewhere. You were involved in some soundtracking. For those who don't know, maybe the Blue Devils Entertainment, you got to play on the Monsters University soundtrack, which I was like, man, of course. Like, I need to live in California near Hollywood to where I can like play on movie soundtracks.
Gotta make it out here.
How was that like? Or was like, did you get an email or a phone call or a text like, hey, you wanna play some drums for this movie, or what?
All we were told, it was an email. It was going to be right after a camp weekend. So it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday camp weekend. And then we were told that there was a gig on Monday up in the Bay Area, like Northern California, if anybody wanted to stay. They were looking for a set number of people, and the first people that responded would get the gig. And I was like, well, shoot, I'll stay. Okay, I don't know what it is. Told us it was for a movie. That's about it. And then the day of, they start revealing all these details. And I was just like, had the hugest smile on my face. That day, like, single-handedly got me involved with the music industry and like the music business side of things, which is like what I do now. But yeah, I credit a lot to just that day of being at Skywalker Sound and seeing like all the behind the scenes of music recording and music business offices. I was just like heart eyes the whole time. Like, no matter what I looked at, I was like, I never want to leave this place. Like, how do I be a part of this? And so, yeah, it was credit a lot to that day.
That's pretty sick. Those behind the scenes videos and stuff are pretty cool too. You guys all drumming with like the headphones and stuff. And,
oh yeah.
Like going in the booth and like listening back to like what you were doing. It's really cool. I think it's all on YouTube. I haven't seen
that. I'm gonna have to go find that.
Oh yeah, it's on YouTube.
Yeah, Mike, YouTube.
Dude, you know me. I don't watch old drum corps shows. I don't watch a ton of stuff. I do this.
I watch everything.
I know, dude. You're a junkie. You just absorb all of it.
So.
Mike's too busy building his computer.
Yeah, I'm being a nerd over here, writing computer code and stuff and editing audio.
So obviously, you just mentioned the transition. Like, that inspired you. You ended up going to the University of Berkeley, Valencia, right? You went to Spain.
I did, yeah. So once I aged out, I finished my bachelor's. Actually, I got a bachelor's in public relations. Didn't take the music route because I wanted, like everybody, something to fall back on. That standard thing. But then it was like the farther I tried to run from music and from just the community in general, the harder I got pulled back. So I stopped trying to run away and looked for master's programs that could kind of bridge the two worlds. Like I had a background in PR and business and all that good stuff, but I also had a huge interest in this background in music. So as I was searching for programs or certificates, I came across, Berklee College of Music had a master's in global entertainment and music business. And I was like, that's it. That's what I want to do. That's my next step. And then I started finding out like, well, it's in Spain. You have to move there for a year and be in Europe. And I was like, well, that's not a bad ticket.
Sign me up.
Yeah, like, let's do it. Let's apply. So I applied and got in, and kind of just introduced me into the world of, actual entertainment outside of the marching community and all the business stuff and industry things, and really felt like I could make a difference with the marching community with all of that knowledge that I learned. And actually made my thesis to be a company, because it was a business plan was my thesis. They allowed me to do a big, long business plan, but I made my thesis as a business plan to create a company that would service artists and the marching community in the music industry type world. So whether that's, creative management, artist management, or record label services, servicing drum corps of getting their stuff up on streaming platforms, creating different mediums for the marching community, just like you guys are doing with this podcast, kind of just like bringing that webbing effect of like, expand the web for the marching community, as well as regular artists too. We work with performing acts that aren't involved in the marching community. So there's a broad range of projects that we take in, but I will say a lot of the influence and a lot of the stuff that we do work on is from the marching community. So that was kind of an expedited summary of how I got to now, but
No, I dig it. Like,
that's good.
It's like bridging two worlds. I mean, and I think that makes perfect sense. Obviously, we're doing this podcast right now, marching, and I do still teach some indoor independent group, but this is kind of like a way for Mike and I to just do what you were talking about. Like, you can't, if it's something you're so passionate about and it's so ingrained in you, it's been such a big part of your life, it's really hard to just like turn away from it.
Yeah.
I've find a way to include it somehow, some way. So that's kind of, this is our outlet for that, where we can stay involved and like stay connected and meet new people in the activity like we're doing right now. So even though it's not my like day-to-day job, it's like my passion. So
yeah.
Passion project for sure.
Passion project. Yeah.
They're important. They're important. Those are the things that I feel like keep us sane throughout the grind of our normal day-to-day. Those things that you're passionate about, that's what you like pour your free time into, and it, even if it is work, it doesn't feel like it, and it's just great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you get that taste of success at something that you're passionate about, so that's what you go after. It's like, I worked for a little bit. When I came back from Spain, I was working in Hollywood at a record label, and I just remember like it was cool. And when you say it out loud, it's like, wow, you were doing it. You were in it. You were at a record label in Hollywood. Like, you don't get any more in the industry than that.
Nope.
And just like every day, I was like, there's something missing. Like, I'm bored. Like,
It's
this
really
is cool
funny.
and all, but
it's hilarious you say that, because I have said those same things to my parents. I've said the same thing to Evan before. It's like you reach the pinnacle of something and you experience what that feels like. And I know that might sound kind of narcissistic or whatever, but you reach that feeling and you're like, I have to get that again. Like, I have to. And so any kind of hobby that I've adopted since then, like, I'm always like, if I don't have the time to get to be good at this, I don't want to do it at all. Because what's the point? And it's always that constant strive to reach that point of anything.
Yeah. Or just looking for like that same feeling of passion. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I think, when you've been involved in something that you're deeply passionate about your whole life, pretty much, you can recognize quickly when you're not passionate about something.
That's
or
a really
when,
good way to put it. Yeah.
That spark isn't there. And I think that's always helped guide me to my next thing. Is like, I may spend a little bit of time like I did at the record label in Hollywood, but I was able to recognize like, this isn't serving me in the way that I thought it would. Time to move on, time to pivot, and find that next spark. So
I think that's
to a
super
fault, but
yeah, but at the same time, I'm sure that your time anywhere, whether it was there at the record label, even though it may not have been what you were passionate or desired, like you were able to pick up some skill set or some knowledge and wisdom that you're like, all right, I can take this though. Like, and I feel like that's with any job or career. If somebody's like, this isn't what I want to do, just like soak it up. Like you'll learn something,
right.
And then you'll be able to apply that to the next thing. And I've obviously been like deep diving like your Facebook and Instagram and stuff for this preparation for this podcast. But you've been doing
so
stuff.
Well prepared.
You've been doing stuff on social media. I credit my research to actually Hot Ones on YouTube with the host Sean Evans, where they're eating all those spicy wings.
Yeah.
Because he always like super prepares, so I try to mimic that.
Well, side note, I feel like he has to be prepared because you can't ask them questions as they're like sweating and just dying from these hot wings. Like they're not going to be able to tell you their bio as their mouth is like in flames. Like
oh yeah, for sure. And like I could imagine too, as they're like getting annihilated by this like hot spicy wings, he just asks them like a super basic question that he get to any interview, and they're just like, dude, I get asked that all the time. Like next question or something like that. So he has to be creative, but. So obviously on social media now, it seems like you're using your Instagram and Facebook page as a way to share education. I know you started like a private page recently, like throughout the pandemic, where you're like, hey, let's all come together and just like continue to progress. Like what sort of things have you been working on? Or I guess just like explain that in more detail than I did to everybody.
So pretty much like you said, I just felt that there was a huge gap in like, cool, there's no season happening. People can't have rehearsals or, down to the high school, middle school level. And I think I always knew, I know I have a platform. So I was like, why don't I use it? I'll just record a bunch of videos and chop them up. I did a virtual clinic with this group in Brooklyn, and I had to film like basically a 30-minute lesson, and I had to chop it up in little segments, and I was like, I'm gonna use this on my social media. And then they started blowing up, and I was like, oh, okay, I should do more of this. Like clearly it's valuable. And then I just started having fun with it, and then I brought people to a private Facebook page. I gave them resources every week and like sight reading and chop outs and rudiment builders and all this good stuff. And it just was super transparent with a bunch of material I had. So I was like, why not? Hopefully it'll translate into some lessons or into, some other opportunities. And I know it definitely has. But again, it was just my way to kind of give back to the community with my platform and stay connected, all those good things that we talked about before.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, the short clips make sense, which is what Mike had the idea of too, of like starting to chop up our episodes. Like obviously we want people to listen to the podcast, but not everyone's like me, and I'm like, I hope this is 3 hours long. I gotta drive. Let's go. So some of the times the clips are easier to digest, which is why we started doing that. Our most recent one was an Eric Shriver clip from an episode we did with him. I saw
that one actually.
But and then I saw the Beyonce challenge too, the 10 going through the measures.
Seriously, do it. Seriously, do it. It's so fun.
I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Have to dust off the hands, but
I'm always drumming to music, and I'm like, I don't know. I doubt myself when it comes to like the bio stuff, like Ralph Nader, like let me make up a whole lick to this song. Like it would literally take me all day. I just don't have those improv skills.
Yeah, I don't either.
He's got
tried.
some suave and swagger that I don't contain or possess.
Yeah, like I'm not even gonna try at this point.
You want me to play some action tap with the metronome perfectly? I'm your man.
I got you.
I'm gonna do some stick tricks. Like, all right, give me some time, bro.
Right. So that was me kind of dipping my toe in the water of like, here's what I can do. It's kind of up my alley, but it's not quite with, I'm not going to give you something with the Met, and let's make it fun. So
No, I dig it. I for sure dig it. Well, do you have any like things lined up in the future or anything that you are like working on or like just kind of rolling with it?
yeah, I mean, to be honest, I've been out of work or furloughed since the whole pandemic thing happened. I don't know if you guys know, but I'm a drummer at Disneyland. So that stopped real quick. In March, we got shut down. Luckily, they paid us through like half of April. But then after that, it was like, okay, we not only have all this free time, but you got to find a way to make it work. And it was a blessing in disguise of being able to work on my own business. It's called 92 Creatives, and which is my way of doing artist management and label services for, different creative projects and different artists across different industries. It's like, if I like your music or if we vibe well, like, let's see if I can offer some advice and help you on your artist career. So I've been really, really diving into that lately.
That's 92 Creatives.
92 Creatives. Yep.
Nice.
It's been really cool because I have some freedom to, like I said, experiment with the marching arts and different mediums and all that good stuff. I don't know if you guys saw, but Marching Vlogs did a all-star drumline for the summer. They put together a show.
Sick.
Yeah, it was like
this. What is this? What is this
Oh
thing?
my gosh, Mike, you gotta get on YouTube, bro. Like, come on, dude. It was just basically like a bunch of just like local drummers. Bluecoats, Blue Devils, Pulse. Whatever. RCC. They all just got together and were like, we're gonna like wear these face shields and masks and like play these super long exercises, and they're basically just like still drumming and finding a way to do it. We'll have to like.
I'm looking this up right now on my phone. Marching Vlogs.
Dude, they
need to
recently.
watch it.
Dude, they recently did like a full-on production where they overlapped the. They basically wrote show beats and then overlapped it to like tracking and backing and music and stuff. It doesn't line up perfectly, but like it's really close.
All
But
right,
it's
I found
really
it.
cool. And
I'm afraid
it's
to click
super
it
hard.
because it'll start playing through my microphone here. I'll watch it
Dude,
after
the
we're done
quad
here.
rounds are insane. I was like, man, they really put some time in these.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to the guys, and it literally was that. It was, nobody's doing anything. Let's make a drum line. So they made an all-star drum line and wanted to write a show, quote unquote show, stand still, 6 feet apart with the face shields and the masks, all that good stuff. But they ended up doing a live stream of it, put in a bunch of research, partnered with Pacific Crest, which is a local drum corps out here, to use drums and facilities. They literally made it all happen in a span of like a month, which is like props to them.
Mm-hmm.
Live stream the show and the exercises and raised a bunch of money for a local food bank. So I was like, wow, that's like super awesome. I hit him up
Sick.
and was like, hey guys, you guys did something super awesome. My company works with creative projects like this to put them in different mediums. Right now, you guys only exist on YouTube and social platforms, Instagram, all that good stuff. Nobody has really dived into putting show music or recorded performances on streaming platforms like Spotify or Apple Music, Tidal, all that good stuff. I was like, that's my expertise. That's my specialty. Would you guys be willing to try? If it works, hell yeah. We were the first ones to kind of dive into that world. So I've been working with them for a couple weeks now, just trying to make that happen. So be on the lookout for that, of
That's pretty
hearing
cool.
some sweet show beats on Spotify.
Heck yeah. Dude, they jammed. And honestly, like I feel like what they did and what they put together is like a perfect model for what groups could fall back on or do for the winter. Like the winter season probably not going to look like what it normally does. Let's just be honest. There's too many question marks. There's too many things up in the air. There's no answers. There's no certainty, especially from a financial standpoint for groups to just commit to it. And I'm sure out there in California, the restrictions are much more severe than even what they are here. But here it is. you got some kids and some dudes and some chicks who got together and they learned some sweet beats. They probably had fun just being able to drum again.
Yeah.
They put some stuff together. Were they marching and playing? No. Were they getting better and still crafting their skills and keeping their chops up? Yes.
Mhm.
So like that's a great option for what is potentially not going to happen this winter.
Right.
But,
Right. No, I think it's definitely heading there. That's why I keep saying we need people to be innovative. We need people to not be stagnant and not like accept where we are. Like, oh well, it's just not going to happen. Okay, we're not going to have a season. Like, no, let's get creative. Like, we could still get, bring a videographer in if you can afford it, or somebody's mom or dad. I don't know. Film some cool angles of like the drumline performing to the best of their ability. Or I know one high school out here is actually taking the opportunity to let the kids write the show. So like
that's really
the director
cool.
is like, all right, we'll have a handful of people you can apply to go through like composition stuff, and you guys can write the show. And they're gonna do it because there's no like pressure of a competitive season, at least not yet, or really, probably not in the future either for the season.
or
But
rules.
right,
Yeah.
like you can literally do whatever you want, and so I think that's a cool way to do it too.
For sure. I'm excited to see what happens with that then.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds really cool.
Interest peaked officially.
Yes.
So, I mean, Evan said that he's skeptical, and I've said on here before, I'm skeptical that we'll have a WGI season that looks like what we're used to. Do you guys think drum corps is going to happen next summer? I know it's just straight speculation, but I think it will. I think drum corps, it might be a little different, but I think drum corps is going to be a thing for 2021.
I have thoughts, but I'll let Nicole go first and see if she has some thoughts.
I'm trying to not be too optimistic, but I'm thinking that there will be some sort of tour, but it will be very, very short. I'm thinking it'll be like the corps get together for like 2 weeks at the beginning of August and do like a couple shows and then indie with limited fans, or maybe the shows before that are just regional, like the SoCal groups stay in California. Like there won't be any traveling, that's for sure. High schools already are saying no. Like you're not going to bring a 150 plus unit to the high school and stay overnight. Like just no. So I don't think the season will happen like that. But I don't know. It's tough to say. What do you think, Evan?
I have been trying to think of the list without being super long-winded. I've had this conversation with a bunch of different people who work at a bunch of different places in a bunch of different drum corps. I think in order for DCI to survive, and this is a podcast for another day to go over all this, but it's going to have to basically adapt. The seasons are going to have to be shorter for a number of reasons. If you shorten the season, you eliminate the overlap of school usage with high school, like the actual students and like the independent groups that house them.
Mm-hmm.
Another factor of that is financially. If you shorten the season, what does that mean? You don't have to travel as much. You don't have to pay as much for gas. You don't have to spend as much money on food, and you don't have to spend as much money on housing.
That's true.
What is that going to require drum corps to do? DCI needs to change the rules. They need to shorten the shows. That way, if you're doing a 9-minute show or 8-minute show, as opposed to a 13-minute show, you can still achieve the same level of excellence because you're going to have shorter seasons. You're going to have less practice time. Plus, DCI shows are incredibly long and boring anyway.
I was
Get these
about to add
ballads
that.
out of here. Let's just
Dude,
say
like 13-minute show, get out of here. We just you cut it out.
Evan and
WGI
what was it?
found the sweet spot. You're like 7.5 to 8 minutes. Like you
Yeah.
can hold my interest through that.
Evan,
I
what
would
was-
give 8.5 to 9 for
I
drum
think
corps.
I agree. That's probably the sweet spot. What was the year? Was it 2 years ago? You and I went to finals and we were in the
God.
stadium for semis.
We watched the top 13, and at 7, I was
my.
like
Three
like,
groups
bro.
in. No, 3 groups in. I was like, dude, I can't sit here for 10 more
Oh,
groups.
no.
and
I
they're
can't do
theoretically like getting better as you go, and I'm just like, no.
No.
The shows just
No way.
never end. 13 minutes is so
So-
long. It's
yeah.
a really long show.
And they got like pre-shows and like, I was just like,
Yeah.
bro, come on, what are we doing
It's a
here?
little
Yeah.
too much now.
I'm
So-
like that. I'm even like that with WGI. I can only watch like maybe 6 groups in a row, and then I'm like, okay, I gotta go.
Yeah.
Watch a lot.
Part of that
or
a little
something.
bit is us three have been involved so long. We're a little jaded. Like we've seen
True.
so many shows. We get the formula. A lot of them follow from like movement to movement to movement, and it's just I just can't watch a lot anyway. But I think shortening them would help a ton, and I'm fully on board with because the cost of drum corps is becoming astronomical. I'm throwing a concept out there, like what if they put like a cap on spending on what corps are
luxury
allowed to
tax like
spend
sports teams.
on like sound equipment, uniforms, props, like sports teams have a salary cap. Why shouldn't drum corps have a cap on what they can spend on props, uniforms, etc.?
Well,
I'm all about it.
I think it's gonna basically do it to themselves after this summer. People were like realizing their budget was a little bit reckless. So, but we have to fundraise this money because we don't get to sell merch all summer. Oh crap!
Yep. Bingo.
But that's probably a podcast for like a whole separate podcast.
Yeah,
We've had like 5 different separate podcast
that's true.
topics.
We'll just have to do
brought up.
some follow-ups.
Yeah, we go
You
on
guys better
tangents.
cover these topics at some point, or I'm gonna be disappointed.
We will.
Well, actually, that one in particular, I already have a person, a caption head lined up that wants to do that one.
Good.
So.
We're talking about the
Yes.
spending cap thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
That's already on the docket. We have a short list of future guests in the next handful of these we have put together. So,
Little tease.
Yes. Nice.
well, Evan, did we hit everything on your outline? We've been going for,
I
believe it
think
or
so.
not, an hour and 18
Dude,
minutes.
this has gone by fast.
Very fast.
It has.
Well, But yeah, I think we did. I mean,
Yeah, I'm looking
whatever.
at it.
The
and
outline is what it is, but
Yeah, we do whatever we want, obviously. But yeah, so if you guys are okay with it, let's close this sucker out. You guys good with that?
Cool. I'm good with it.
yeah.
Nicole, this has been a blast. Thanks for hanging out with us for an hour and a half or however long it's
Oh
been.
man, it's been
Um,
awesome. It's gone by super fast. It was fun.
Yep. And to all you listeners, again, I'll reiterate from earlier, subscribe on YouTube, like the video if you like what we're doing, drop a comment, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, whatever your listening platform of choice is. Hit us up on patreon.com/agedoutpodcast if you want to support us financially. Check out the reaction videos, the clip videos we're doing on YouTube. Follow on Instagram and Facebook to make sure you find out when all those go live. And we will see everybody next time.
Peace.